What's up, guys? We have a great video for you again today. These are my starts and sits at QB for week 14. First off, I'm starting Baker Mayfield. He gets a great matchup versus the Raiders, who are still missing Nate Hobbs on defense. The Bucks have an elite passing offense, and I think they should be able to take advantage of the Raiders' secondary. I'm also starting Tua Tagovailoa. This is a tough matchup on paper versus the Jets, but Sauce Gardner is carrying a doubtful designation this week, and the Dolphins' passing offense is starting to roll. I think this is a must-win game for the Dolphins as they need to win it if they want any hope to make the playoffs. I think they're going to be letting the ball rip. This week, I'm also starting Sam Darnold. He gets a nice matchup versus Atlanta, who's a little bit banged up. The Falcons played good defense last week, but Darnold has been dealing, and I think he will continue with that trend in week 14. My long shot start is Cooper Rush. He hasn't looked bad in recent weeks, and he gets to face off versus a Bengals secondary who, let's face it, they've been less than stellar this season. There's a reason why Joe Burrow is putting up MVP numbers and the team is already out of the playoff picture, and that reason is the Bengals' porous defense. This week I'm sitting Justin Herbert versus the Kansas City Chiefs. This should be a defensive battle, and I think the Chargers will take a balanced offensive approach. I'm just not sure if the volume will be there for Herbert this week. I'm also sitting Russell Wilson. He's coming off a monster game versus the Bengals, but the Browns secondary healed up a lot faster than I thought they would, and they look like they're going to be close to full strength. On the other hand, Cleveland is going to be banged up in the trenches, so I could see Pittsburgh taking a run heavy approach in this game. And this week, it pains me to say it, and I hope I'm wrong since I'm a huge fan, but I'm also sitting Jameis Winston. The Steelers are getting healthier on defense, and although I think Winston will have huge volume, I'm worried that the Browns may turn the ball over a few times in this game, and Winston could struggle on the road versus Pittsburgh.
Here are some running backs to start and sit in Week 14 for fantasy football. Starting off, I really like Chase Brown's matchup against Dallas on Monday night. Over his past 4 games, Brown has posted at least 17 points in every matchup in half-point PPR, and against the Cowboys' 29th ranked run defense, I like that streak to continue. Next up, I'm rolling with James Cook this week against the LA Rams. The Rams defense gives up 4.7 yards per carry, and they are bottom 10 against opposing fantasy running backs. Conversely, Cook has been rolling in his past 3 games, scoring 15 plus fantasy points in each of those outings in half point PPR. Next, I like starting Isaac Guerrero. If you were lucky enough to pick him up off waiver wires this week, you have to put him in. Guerrero inherits the lead back role offense and gets to face the Chicago Bears this week. The Bears are bottom 10 in rushing defense in the NFL, so I like him to have a nice game. And finally, my long shot start of the week is Travis Homer of the Chicago Bears. The Bears' 2 top running backs, DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson, could both miss this game, and Homer would take over the lead back duties in that case. Monitor the other 2 backs' status throughout the week, and if you need some help at running back, Homer might be a guy who can help your playoff push. Moving on to who we are sitting, I like keeping Najee Harris on the bench this week against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns contained Harris in their last matchup a few weeks ago and ceded more yards on the ground to Jaylen Warren. I think that the Pittsburgh might game plan for that and use Warren more heavily than usual in this one. I also like sitting Chuba Hubbard against the Eagles this week. The Eagles have one of the top defenses in the league, and combine that with the fact that Hubbard is losing carries to the talented Jonathan Brooks, and this is not a great matchup for Hubbard. And finally, I am sitting Rico Dowdle versus the Bengals. The Bengals defense is a disaster, but look for the Cowboys to lean on their passing game against Cincinnati's woeful secondary.
All right, everyone, how's it going? We have your starts and sits at the wide receiver position. First up, we have Jackson Smith and Jigba of the Seattle Seahawks. He's really started to find his stride as Geno Smith's main first read, and look for him to be in a game at the shootout against the Cardinals and do really well and put up a lot of points. Next, we have Malik Neighbors, New York Giants. Even with the terrible QB situation, Neighbors' volume is great, and he should have a good game against a terrible New Orleans defense. On to Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. Look for him to continue his trend of every other game having a good fantasy week, and this is his week to have a good game against a bottom 3 pass defense. Your long shot of the week is Adam Thielen of the Carolina Panthers. As Young's number 1 option, he should be okay just based on volume, even against a very tough Eagles team. Now on to your sits. First up, we have Tariq Hill of the Miami Dolphins. I know it's hard to sit Tariq Hill, but with his wrist injury, playing the Jets defense, probably going to be shadowed by Sauce. Look for him to underperform as he has 9 of 12 games this season. Onto Xavier Worthy of the Kansas City Chiefs against a very, very tough Chargers defense. Expect his stone hands that are covered in butter to just not come through for you. Finally, Juwan Jennings of the San Francisco 49ers. Even with Purdy back, look for the Bears D to clamp down on him and limit Jennings in this game.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fantasy playoffs are upon us, but are you going to be able to make it in? You will if you listen to these tight end start sits. First up, we're starting Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Even with Evans returning, the targets have still been there for Otton. I didn't think they would be. However, I guess with Godwin out, Otton is still getting targets. Raiders defense has been pretty awful this year. We're also looking to start Mike Gesicki of the Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. Listen, last week he caught all 5 targets for 53 yards, and he showed the ability to make some big plays over the middle of the field. So Mike Gesicki, you are getting the nod this week. Also getting the nod, Grant Calcaterra of the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Carolina Panthers. I mean, with Goddard likely out, Calcaterra, he's going to slot right into one of the best offenses in the NFL against one of the worst defenses. And earlier this season without Goddard, he averaged more than 3 catches and 40 yards per game. Looking at a long shot, we like Chigoziem Okonkwo of the Tennessee Titans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 6 targets last week. We just wish he was a little more productive with them. Only had the 3 catches, but we're hoping he can prey on a poor Jacksonville team. Sitting Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears at the San Francisco 49ers. He is who we thought he was. He's the 5th or 6th choice of weapon on that Bears team. Not to mention Fred Warner does great lining up against opposing tight ends. We're also going to sit Noah Gray of the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Don't believe the hype. He does have 62% snap share. That's nothing to balk at. But Travis Kelce, who's at over 90% snap share, he's still that #1 guy on the receiving core. Defenses that we're looking to stream, Tennessee Titans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville without Trevor Lawrence, but it's not like that has mattered much this season. They are only 2-10 this season, and Mac Jones 0-2 as a starter, so I'm not liking that Jacksonville offense. We're also starting the Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. What a treat this is going to be watching the Bengals absolutely decimate the Cowboys on Monday night. Obviously no Dak, but they will also be without starting right guard Zach Martin. And listen, if you guys are looking to stash a team, if you've already locked up a playoff seed, or you just got a spot on your bench, the Arizona Cardinals, not this week against the Seattle Seahawks. However, looking ahead to week 15 against the New England Patriots and week 16 against the Carolina Panthers, if you're going to make the playoffs and you got a spot, stash these guys before they get snatched up next week. My long shot for defense is going to be the New York Giants versus the New Orleans Saints. Yep, this is what a long shot is, especially given the Giants' recent defense's performance. But hey, facing a banged-up Saints team, we are all in on them. We are sitting the San Francisco 49ers versus the Chicago Bears. Not willing to trust this defense much until they can prove they can stop teams. Listen, we've just been seeing them get torched. People are running on them. People are throwing on them. We are not trusting the San Francisco 49ers. And the last 2 seasons, they have been struggling against QBs with any types of legs that can get out of the pocket and run. Also sitting, #1 defense in fantasy in most formats, the Minnesota Vikings versus the Atlanta Falcons. They're the #1 defense, like I said, but old Kirk Cobains is coming back to town, and he's got a point to prove. Plus, with the weapons that Atlanta has on offense, he will be able to make that point. And we're also sitting the Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams. We saw last week that they were capable of it in the snow. However, it's tough to play offense. It's even more tough to play defense, I guess, in the snow. But can they repeat that performance in a dome against another team with plenty of offensive weapons at their disposal? I don't see it. I like the Rams. They're going to be pretty good. Buffalo, I'm fading you.